Claire Thompson stood outside the community center, clutching her reusable coffee mug, her breath visible in the chilly morning air. The iron gate, rusted and stubborn, refused to budge, trapping a small crowd of volunteers on the wrong side. They were there for the annual Veterans Fundraiser, a cause Claire held close. She adjusted her jacket, the embroidered patch of the 82nd Airborne Division catching the light, a memento from her late brother, Ethan, who'd served proudly. The crowd muttered, impatient, as Greg Marshall, the center's smug manager, fumbled with the lock. Greg, in his pressed khakis and too-tight polo, had a reputation for cutting corners and basking in unearned praise. He'd been dodging Claire's emails about the fundraiser's budget for weeks, claiming oversights, while redirecting funds to his pet projects, like a flashy new sign for the center bearing his name. Figures, Claire muttered under her breath, watching Greg's half-hearted attempts. She volunteered for years, pouring her heart into these events, but Greg's arrival last spring had changed everything. He treated the center like his personal kingdom, dismissing volunteers, input, and prioritizing optics over substance. Last month, he'd forgotten to order supplies for the veterans' booth, leaving Claire scrambling. When she'd confronted him, he'd smirked, saying, "Maybe you should stick to baking cookies, sweetheart." The condescension stung, but Claire wasn't one to back down. Ethan had taught her resilience, lessons forged in desert deployments and late-night letters home. A volunteer, Mike, a burly retiree with a graying beard, nudged Claire. "This guy's useless. Bet he didn't even check the gate last night." The crowd's grumbling grew louder as Greg threw up his hands, blamming the old junk gate. Claire's eyes narrowed. She'd seen this before, Greg's habit of deflecting blame while volunteers cleaned up his messes. But today something snapped. She stepped forward, her boots crunching on gravel, and called out, "Move over, Greg. Let me try." Greg scoffed, his face reddening. What do you know about locks?" Ignoring him, Claire knelt by the gate, her fingers tracing the rusty mechanism. Years ago, Ethan had shown her how to jimmy stubborn locks during a camping trip, a skill she'd never forgotten. The crowd watched, skeptical but curious, as she worked. Greg's smirk faded when the gate creaked, then swung open with a groan. A murmur of approval rippled through the group. Claire stood, brushing dirt off her jeans, her patch glinting. Greg's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected her to succeed where he'd failed. Inside, the volunteers dispersed to set up booths, but Claire felt Greg's glare. He muttered something about lucky breaks and stormed off. Mike chuckled, clapping her shoulder. "You showed him, Claire." She smiled faintly, but her mind was already on the fundraiser. She'd spent months planning, from securing donations to organizing a memorial wall for local veterans. Greg's interference, rerouting funds and losing paperwork, had nearly derailed it. Today, though, she'd make sure the event shone, with or without his help. As she hung Ethan's old unit flag by the entrance, she felt a quiet resolve. This was for her brother, not Greg's ego. The community center buzzed with activity as volunteers strung banners and arranged tables. Claire moved with purpose, tapping photos to the memorial wall, smiling faces of veterans, including Ethan's, his grin frozen in a 2009 snapshot. Her chest tightened, but she pushed through, pinning up the last picture. Across the room, Greg hovered near the refreshment table, schmoozing with a local reporter, Lisa Bennett, who was covering the fundraiser. Claire overheard him boasting about his event, claiming credit for the memorial wall idea. Her fists clenched. She'd pitched that wall months ago, only for Greg to dismiss it as sentimental fluff until Lisa's outlet showed interest. Claire approached, her voice steady but sharp. Actually, Lisa, the wall was a volunteer effort. I spearheaded it to honor my brother and others. Lisa raised an eyebrow, jotting notes while Greg's smile faltered. Well, I approved it, he stammered, but Lisa's attention stayed on Claire, who explained the wall's purpose with quiet passion. The reporter nodded, impressed, and asked for a quote. Claire spoke of Ethan's sacrifice and the community's veterans, her words raw but composed. Greg slunk away, muttering about logistics. As the event began, attendees trickled in, families, veterans, and local officials. Claire manned the donation booth, her patch-catching eyes. An older man, Tom, a Vietnam vet, paused, pointing at it. 82nd Airborne, huh, my unit. They swapped stories, his gravelly voice softening as he recalled buddies lost. Claire listened, her heart full. Moments like these made the work worth it. But Greg's shadow loomed. She spotted him redirecting a donor to his flashy sign-in board, steering them away from the memorial wall. Her jaw tightened. He was undermining her again. By noon, the crowd swelled, and Claire's booth was a hub of activity. She handed out pamphlets, her enthusiasm infectious. A young couple donated generously, moved by Ethan's photo. Your brother sounds like a hero, the woman said. Claire nodded, throat tight. He was. Across the room, Greg posed for photos, basking in the event's success. Claire's resolve hardened. She'd let him take credit for now, but she wasn't done. Ethan's patch on her jacket felt heavier, a reminder of what she was fighting for. As the day wore on, Claire noticed small issues. Empty water coolers, mislabeled signs, all traceable to Greg's negligence. Volunteers grumbled and Mike pulled her aside. He's gonna tank this event if we don't do something. Claire agreed but knew confronting Greg directly wouldn't work. He'd twist it, play the victim. Instead, she started quietly fixing his oversights, rallying volunteers to refill coolers and correct signs. Each small win felt like reclaiming her event. By late afternoon, the fundraiser was thriving, with donations pouring in. Claire glanced at Ethan's photo, whispering, "This one's for you." But Greg's smug face in the crowd told her this wasn't over. She'd need a bigger move to put him in his place. The fundraiser hummed with energy, the community center alive with chatter and laughter. Claire circulated, thanking donors and sharing stories about the veterans honored on the memorial wall. Her passion drew people in, and the donation jar overflowed. Yet Greg's presence grated. He flitted about, shaking hands with council members and posing for Lisa's camera, acting as if he'd single-handedly orchestrated the event. Claire caught him telling a donor, "I worked tirelessly to make this happen." Her blood boiled, but she kept her cool, smiling as she handed out programs. Mid-afternoon, a problem arose. The sound system meant for a guest speaker, a retired colonel, crackled and died. Greg, who'd insisted on handling tech, shrugged it off. "Old equipment," he said loudly, ensuring everyone heard his excuse. Volunteers exchanged looks. Claire, who'd begged him weeks ago to test the system, felt her patience fray. She marched to the storage room, digging through dusty boxes until she found a spare microphone and a portable speaker. With Mike's help, she rigged a workaround, testing it just as the colonel arrived. The crowd applauded as the speaker's voice boomed clearly, unaware of Claire's quick fix. The colonel's speech was a hit, his stories of service resonating deeply. Claire stood at the back, her eyes on Ethan's photo, feeling a swell of pride. But Greg's voice cut through, boasting to Lisa about ensuring the speaker's slot. Claire's stomach churned. His lies were relentless, but she couldn't call him out publicly, not yet. Instead, she focused on the veterans, chatting with Tom and others who lingered by the wall. Their gratitude fueled her. As evening approached, the event wound down, but a final activity loomed, a raffle for veteran-owned business prizes. Claire had coordinated it, securing donations from local shops. Greg, however, had reorganized the raffle tickets, claiming her system was confusing. Now tickets were mismatched and winners were getting wrong prizes. Attendees grumbled and Claire stepped in, calmly sorting the mess while Greg schmoozed, oblivious. Mike whispered, "He's a leech, Claire. You gonna let him skate?" She shook her head. "Not forever." By night's end, the fundraiser had raised thousands, a record. Lisa's article would run tomorrow, and Claire knew Greg would hog the spotlight. But she'd noticed something earlier. Greg's budget reports left on a table showed discrepancies. He'd siphoned funds meant for the fundraiser to his sign project. Claire pocketed a copy, her mind racing. Confronting him now would be messy, but evidence like this could shift the power. As she locked up, Greg approached, smirking. "Nice work, Claire. Too bad you needed my oversight." She met his gaze, her voice low. "We'll see about that, Greg." His smile wavered, sensing her steel. Claire walked away, Ethan's patch warm against her shoulder, knowing she'd just begun to fight. Tomorrow she'd plan her next move, one that would make Greg regret underestimating her. Claire woke early, the budget report tucked in her bag. She sipped coffee at her kitchen table, Ethan's old dog tags dangling from a lamp, glinting in the morning light. The fundraiser's success felt bittersweet. Her hard work had paid off, but Greg's credit-stealing gnawed at her. The report, though, was a weapon. It showed $2,000 meant for veteran outreach redirected to Greg's sign. If she could get it to the right people, like the community center's board, Greg's reign might crumble. But she needed to be careful. Greg had allies, including Nancy, the board's treasurer, who fawned over his vision. At the center, Claire volunteered to help clean up, using it as an excuse to snoop. Greg was out, schmoozing at a council breakfast, leaving his office unlocked. She slipped in, scanning his desk. A sticky note listed board members' names with dollar amounts bribes. She snapped a photo, her heart pounding. If Greg was buying loyalty, she'd need more than the report to take him down. Back in the main hall, Mike joined her, hauling trash bags. "Find anything?" he asked, reading her expression. Claire hesitated, then showed him the photo. His eyes widened. "This guy's dirtier than I thought." They devised a plan. Claire would compile evidence, budget reports, emails, the sticky note, and present it to Lisa, whose article could pressure the board. But first, she'd confront Nancy privately. Claire found her at the center's coffee station, her pearls gleaming under fluorescent lights. "Nancy, can we talk about the budget?" Claire asked, keeping her tone neutral. Nancy's smile was tight. "Greg handles that, dear," Claire pressed, mentioning the $2,000. Nancy's eyes flickered, but she deflected, praising Greg's efficiency. Claire left, unconvinced but undeterred. That afternoon, Claire met Lisa at a diner. She laid out the evidence, keeping her voice low. Lisa's pen flew across her notepad. "This could be big," she said, "but I need corroboration. Can you get another volunteer to back you?" Claire nodded, thinking of Mike. Back home, she emailed him, attaching the report and photo. Mike replied instantly, "I'm in. Let's nail him." They agreed to meet tomorrow, but Claire couldn't shake a nagging worry. Greg wasn't stupid. He'd cover his tracks if he sensed trouble. The next day, Claire arrived at the center to find Greg waiting. His smile was cold. "Heard you're poking around my office, Claire." Her pulse spiked, but she held his gaze. "Just cleaning up your mess, Greg." He leaned closer, voice low. "Careful, sweetheart. You don't want to lose your little volunteer gig." The threat hung heavy, but Claire's resolve didn't waver. She thought of Ethan, his courage under fire. If he could face war, she could face Greg. As he walked away, she clutched her phone, the evidence safe in her cloud. This wasn't just about the fundraiser anymore. It was about justice. Claire knew the next step would be risky, but she was ready to push forward. Claire spent the evening poring over her evidence, organizing it into a clear timeline. Greg's budget cuts, his dismissive emails, the sticky note. She added screenshots of volunteer complaints about his mismanagement, gathered from a group chat Mike had shared. Her dining table looked like a war room, papers spread under Ethan's dog tags. She felt a mix of dread and determination. Confronting Greg directly was tempting but reckless. He'd spin it, charm his way out. The board was her target, but Nancy's loyalty to Greg was a hurdle. Claire needed an ally on the board, someone impartial. She called Tom, the Vietnam vet who'd mentioned serving on the center's advisory panel. Over coffee the next morning, she explained everything, showing him the budget report. Tom's weathered face hardened. "I've seen guys like Greg before, leeches in uniform, hiding behind rank. We'll fix this." He promised to raise her concerns at the next board meeting, but warned her, "Nancy's tight with Greg. You'll need more than papers to sway her." Claire's next move was riskier. She reached out to other volunteers, building a coalition. At a park bench meetup, she met with Mike, Jenna, a young teacher, and Rosa, a retiree who'd clashed with Greg over canceled senior programs. They shared stories: Greg's habit of losing grant applications, his favoritism toward certain donors, his knack for taking credit. Jenna revealed he'd pressured her to inflate attendance numbers for a report. He said it'd make him look good, she said, disgusted. Claire took notes, her evidence growing. Back at the center, Greg's behavior shifted. He was overly friendly, offering Claire a bigger role in next year's fundraiser. She saw through it, a bribe to keep her quiet. She played along, smiling, but her mind was on the board meeting. Tom had pulled strings, getting her 5 minutes to present her case. She spent hours rehearsing, her words measured but firm, channeling Ethan's calm under pressure. The night before, she couldn't sleep, haunted by Greg's threat. What if the board dismissed her? What if Greg retaliated? The meeting was tense. Claire stood before the board, her patch visible on her jacket. She laid out the evidence: the budget discrepancies, the sticky note volunteer testimonies. Nancy fidgeted, avoiding her gaze, while Tom nodded encouragingly. Claire spoke of the veterans, how Greg's actions disrespected their memory. Her voice broke when she mentioned Ethan, but she pressed on. The board chair, Ellen, a no-nonsense lawyer, listened intently, her pen tapping. Greg, present at the meeting, tried to interrupt, claiming misunderstandings. Ellen silenced him. "We'll review this, Claire, thank you." As she left, Greg's glare followed her. Outside, Mike waited, anxious. "How'd it go?" Claire exhaled. "They listened, that's a start." But she knew Greg wouldn't go quietly. She clutched Ethan's dog tags, now in her pocket, and felt a spark of hope. The truth was out. Whatever came next, she'd face it head-on, just as her brother would have. The board's review dragged on, and Claire felt the weight of waiting. She kept busy, helping Rosa organize a senior craft fair at the center, but Greg's presence was oppressive. He stopped his fake friendliness, replacing it with cold stares and pointed comments. "Don't get too comfortable, Claire," he said one afternoon, brushing past her in the hallway. Her stomach knotted, but she refused to flinch. She'd faced worse. Losing Ethan had carved a hollow in her chest no bully could match. Still, she double-checked her evidence, ensuring it was backed up. Mike and Jenna kept her grounded, meeting for coffee to strategize. Mike suggested leaking the story to Lisa, but Claire hesitated. "If the board doesn't act, we'll need her. Let's wait." Jenna agreed, but her worry was clear. Greg's got friends in high places. What if they bury this? Claire didn't have an answer, but she trusted Tom's influence. He'd called her last night, saying Ellen was digging into Greg's financials. "She's thorough," he'd said. "Give her time." A week later, Claire got a call from Ellen. The board wanted her back for a follow-up. Heart-pounding, she arrived at the center, Ethan's patch sewn onto her bag for strength. The room was packed, Board members, volunteers, even Lisa, who'd caught wind of the drama. Claire presented again, this time with Mike and Jenna, who corroborated her claims. Mike shared how Greg had lost a $5,000 grant for youth programs, while Jenna detailed his pressure to falsify data. The room grew quiet, Nancy's face pale. Greg, given a chance to respond, played the victim. "This is a witch hunt," he said, voice trembling with rehearsed indignation. "Claire's upset because I didn't use her ideas." But his charm faltered under Ellen's scrutiny. She held up the budget report, pointing to discrepancies. "Care to explain this, Greg?" he stammered, blaming clerical errors. Claire watched, her pulse steady. The sticky note photo projected on a screen sealed his fate. Gasps rippled through the room as Ellen read the names and amounts aloud. The board voted to suspend Greg pending an audit. He stormed out, muttering threats, but Claire felt no triumph, only relief. Outside, Lisa cornered her. "This is going in my article. You okay with that?" Claire nodded. "Just keep it about the veterans." Lisa smiled. "You got it." As Claire walked home, Ethan's dog tags clinked in her pocket. She fought for him, for the center, for what was right. But Greg's allies worried her. Nancy hadn't spoken during the meeting, and Claire knew she'd be a problem. That night Mike texted, "You did it, Claire, he's toast." She wasn't so sure. Greg's suspension wasn't a firing, and men like him didn't vanish quietly. She lay awake, planning her next steps. The center needed protecting, and she'd see this through, no matter what came next. Claire's victory felt fragile. Greg's suspension left a void at the center, with Nancy stepping in as interim manager. Claire didn't trust her. Nancy's silence during the board meeting and her cozy history with Greg hinted at trouble. Over breakfast, Claire confided in Tom, who'd become her anchor. "Nancy's loyal to Greg," he warned, stirring his coffee. "She's been skimming event budgets for years. Your evidence might have spooked her, but she's not done." Claire nodded, her resolve hardening. She'd need to watch Nancy closely. The center felt different without Greg's swagger. Volunteers worked with renewed energy, but Claire noticed small issues: missing supplies, delayed emails, locked storage rooms. Nancy claimed transition hiccups, but Claire suspected sabotage. She started documenting everything, keeping a notebook of incidents. One day she caught Nancy shredding papers in Greg's old office. "Just cleaning up," Nancy said, her smile forced. Claire didn't buy it. She texted Mike and Jenna, who agreed to help monitor Nancy's moves. Lisa's article hit the local paper, detailing Greg's mismanagement and Claire's role in exposing it. The headline, "Volunteer Uncovers Center Scandal," drew praise from the community. Donors called, offering support, and veterans like Tom stopped by to thank Claire. But the attention made her uneasy. Nancy's demeanor grew colder, her comments laced with passive aggression. "You're quite the hero, Claire," she said one morning, her tone sharp. Claire ignored it, focusing on a new veteran outreach program she was pitching to Ellen. The board's audit progressed, uncovering more of Greg's misdeeds. Inflated invoices, redirected grants, even a fake vendor account. Claire's evidence had been the spark, but Ellen's team was thorough, tracing funds to Nancy's pet projects. Claire met Ellen privately, sharing her suspicions about Nancy. Ellen listened, her face unreadable. "We're looking into everyone," she said. "Keep doing what you're doing." Claire left, encouraged but cautious. Nancy was Greg. She was subtler, more dangerous. At home, Claire found a letter slipped under her door. Unsigned, it read, "Back off or you'll regret it." Her heart raced, but she refused to panic. She called Mike, who came over with Jenna. They agreed it was likely Nancy or one of Greg's allies. "We need to protect you," Jenna said. Claire shook her head. "Not just me, the center." They devised a plan. Mike would shadow Nancy, while Jenna rallied volunteers to secure supplies and records. Claire would keep pushing her outreach program, staying visible to deter threats. The next day, Claire wore Ethan's patch proudly, a quiet defiance. At the center, she caught Nancy slipping a folder into her bag. "Need help?" Claire asked, her voice calm but firm. Nancy flinched, muttering about personal files. Claire didn't push, but she noted the folder's label, Budget 2024. She texted Ellen immediately. As she hung a new veteran's photo on the memorial wall, Claire felt Ethan's strength. This fight wasn't over, but she was ready for whatever Nancy threw next. The center hummed with cautious optimism as Claire's outreach program took shape. She'd secured a grant for veteran job training, a project Ethan would have loved. Volunteers rallied behind her, but Nancy's shadow loomed. Claire's notebook filled with incidents, locked supply closets, misplaced grant applications, and Nancy's sudden oversight of all budgets. Claire shared her concerns with Mike and Jenna over lunch. "She's covering her tracks," Mike said, frowning. Jenna nodded. "Or setting a trap." Claire agreed. They needed hard proof of Nancy's involvement in Greg's schemes. Claire's chance came unexpectedly. While reorganizing the storage room, she found a box of old financial records buried under holiday decorations. Inside were receipts tied to Greg's fake vendor, signed by Nancy. Claire's pulse quickened. This was the link she'd needed. She photographed everything, sending copies to Ellen and Lisa. "This could blow it open," Lisa texted back. "But be careful, Nancy's connected." Claire knew the risk. Nancy's husband was a council member, but she couldn't stop now. The next board meeting was tense. Claire presented the receipts, her voice steady as she detailed Nancy's role. Tom backed her, citing years of budget oversights under Nancy's watch. Nancy's face reddened, her defense shaky. "These are old records. I was following Greg's orders." Ellen wasn't convinced, ordering a deeper audit. Nancy stormed out, glaring at Claire. Outside, Tom whispered, "You've got guts, kid. Ethan be proud." Claire smiled, but the anonymous letter weighed on her mind. Nancy's retaliation was swift. The next day, Claire's grant application was rejected, citing incomplete paperwork. She'd triple-checked it herself. Furious, she confronted Nancy in her office. "This is personal, isn't it?" Claire asked. Nancy's smile was icy. "You're out of your depth, Claire." Undeterred, Claire rallied volunteers to resubmit the application, working late to ensure every detail was perfect. Mike and Jenna helped, their support unwavering. "We're a team," Mike said, grinning. "Nancy's not ready for us." Lisa's follow-up article hit, exposing Nancy's ties to Greg's vendor scam. The community erupted, with donors demanding accountability. Ellen called an emergency board meeting and Claire was asked to testify again. She arrived, Ethan's patch on her jacket, feeling his courage. The room was packed, volunteers, veterans, even reporters. Claire laid out the evidence, her voice clear. Nancy tried to deflect, blaming Greg, but Ellen presented bank records showing payments to Nancy's personal account. The room gasped. Nancy was suspended on the spot. As Claire left, Lisa caught up. "You're a hero, Claire," she shook her head, "just doing what's right." At home, she touched Ethan's dog tags, relief washing over her. The center was safe, at least for now. But she knew Nancy's connections ran deep. Claire would keep her guard up, ready for any fallout. The fight had been worth it. Ethan's legacy and the veterans' cause were protected. For the first time in weeks, she slept soundly, her brother's patch folded beside her. The center felt lighter without Nancy or Greg, but Claire stayed vigilant. Ellen took over as interim director, promising transparency. Claire's job training program launched, with veterans like Tom attending workshops. She smiled, watching Tom joke with younger vets, but her guard stayed up. Nancy's husband, a council member named Richard, had influence, and Claire heard whispers he was pushing to discredit her. She kept her notebook updated, documenting every interaction just in case. Volunteers rallied around Claire, inspired by her stand. Mike and Jenna organized a thank you event, a small barbecue at the center. As Claire flipped burgers, Lisa approached, notepad in hand. "People are calling you the center's savior," she said. Claire laughed it off. "I just fixed a gate and some paperwork." But Lisa's next article, "Volunteers Fight Saves Community Hub," went viral locally, drawing more donations. Claire was grateful but uneasy. Too much attention could paint a target. Her fears were justified. A week later, Richard emailed Ellen questioning Claire's unauthorized access to records. It was a clear shot, accusing her of overstepping. Claire met with Ellen, explaining how she'd found the receipts legally while volunteering. Ellen nodded, unfazed. Richard's grasping. "The audit cleared you." Still, Claire felt exposed. She asked Mike to keep an eye on center security, worried about retaliation. The job training program became Claire's focus, a beacon of purpose. She mentored a young veteran, Lucas, who'd struggled since returning from deployment. His shy smile after landing a job interview warmed her heart. Moments like these, she thought, were what Ethan fought for, but trouble brewed. At a council meeting, Richard proposed cutting the center's funding, citing mismanagement. Claire knew it was personal. She and Mike attended, her patch catching eyes as she spoke passionately about the center's impact. The council voted to preserve funding, swayed by her evidence and Lisa's articles. Back at the center, Claire found a new lock on the storage room, Richard's doing, she suspected. She reported it to Ellen, who promised to investigate. Meanwhile, the barbecue had sparked a new tradition, monthly veteran meetups. Claire organized the first, with Lucas helping. As veterans shared stories, Claire felt Ethan's presence. She wore his patch proudly, a symbol of her fight. One evening, Lisa called with news. Nancy and Greg faced charges for embezzlement. The audit had uncovered enough to involve the police. Claire exhaled, relief mixing with exhaustion. She won, but at a cost: sleepless nights, threats, suspicion. At the next meetup, Tom raised a glass to her, to Claire, who never backed down. The room cheered and she smiled, touching Ethan's dog tags. The center was thriving, veterans were supported, and justice had prevailed. But Claire knew her work wasn't done. She'd keep fighting for Ethan, for the community, for what was right. As she locked the gate that night, she felt a quiet pride. The jammed gate had started it all, and she'd stepped through, patch and all, to make things right. Claire's life settled into a new rhythm, centered on the veteran meetups and her job training program. The community center buzzed with purpose, volunteers energized by the ousting of Greg and Nancy. Ellen's leadership brought stability, and Claire felt a cautious optimism. She mentored Lucas, whose confidence grew with each job application. His gratitude, quiet nods, and a handwritten thank you note kept her grounded. Ethan's patch, now a fixture on her jacket, drew smiles from veterans who recognized the 82nd Airborne's emblem. But Richard's shadow lingered. His counsel influence meant Claire stayed alert, her notebook ever ready. One morning she arrived to find the center's front sign defaced, "Fraud Hub" scrawled in red paint. Volunteers whispered about Richard's allies, bitter over the embezzlement charges. Claire reported it to Ellen, who called the police. "This is retaliation," Ellen said, her voice grim. Claire agreed, but focused on cleaning the sign, rallying Mike and Jenna to help. As they scrubbed, Mike muttered, "Richard's desperate." Claire nodded. "Desperate's dangerous." She learned from Ethan to anticipate the next move. Lisa's articles kept the pressure on, detailing the charges against Greg and Nancy. Community support surged, with donors funding new programs. Claire pitched a mental health workshop for veterans, inspired by Ethan's struggles after deployment. Ellen approved it, and Claire worked late, researching counselors. But Richard struck again. At a council meeting, he accused the center of misallocating new funds, nomming Claire as a troublemaker. She attended, her voice steady as she presented receipts and grant records, dismantling his claims. The council, swayed by her clarity and Lisa's reporting, dismissed Richard's motion. His face darkened as he left. The mental health workshop launched, a success. Lucas shared his story, his voice shaking but strong, inspiring others. Claire watched, her heart full. But that night her car tires were slashed outside her apartment. She called Mike, who arrived with a spare. "This is Richard," he said, furious. Claire nodded, filing a police report. She refused to be intimidated, wearing Ethan's patch like armor. The next day she found a new ally, a council member, Diane, who'd clashed with Richard. Diane promised to monitor his moves, giving Claire a lifeline. The veteran meetups grew, drawing crowds. Claire organized a memorial run honoring Ethan and others. As runners crossed the finish line, she felt a surge of pride. Lisa's final article praised the center's revival, crediting Claire's courage. Richard's influence waned as his allies distanced themselves, the charges against Nancy sealing his fall. Claire stood by the memorial wall, touching Ethan's photo. She'd faced threats, sabotage, and doubt, but the center thrived. Lucas landed a job, Tom led a workshop, and the community rallied. Claire's fight had preserved Ethan's legacy. As she locked the gate, now smoothly oiled, she smiled. The jammed gate had sparked her stand, and she'd carried it through, patch and all, for justice, for veterans, for her brother. Claire's days were filled with purpose, the community center now a beacon of community strength. The veteran meetups drew larger crowds, and her mental health workshop was fully booked, with Lucas helping lead sessions. Ethan's patch, stitched onto her jacket, became a symbol of resilience, sparking conversations with veterans who shared stories of their own. But Claire remained cautious. Richard's silence after the council defeat felt ominous, like the calm before a storm. She kept her notebook updated, documenting every oddity. A misplaced key, a delayed delivery, knowing small details could matter. One evening, while locking up, Claire noticed a figure lingering across the street. The man, hooded and tall, vanished when she looked twice. Her gut twisted. She texted Mike, who insisted on walking her home. "Richard not done," he said, scanning the dark. Claire nodded, clutching Ethan's dog tags in her pocket. She'd faced worse fears. News of Ethan's death had shattered her, but this was different. This was personal. At home, she double-checked her locks, her evidence backed up in 3 places. The next day, Diane called with news. Richard had been caught pressuring a contractor to overbill the center, a last-ditch effort to discredit Ellen. The contractor, wary of legal trouble, had reported him. Claire exhaled, relief mixing with exhaustion. The police were building a case, linking Richard to Nancy's schemes. Lisa's latest article hinted at his downfall, and the community buzzed with gossip. Claire stayed out of it, focusing on the memorial run's final preparations. She wanted it perfect, a tribute to Ethan and every veteran the center served. The run was a triumph. Hundreds gathered, their sneakers pounding the pavement as Claire led the opening ceremony, her voice steady despite nerves. Lucas crossed the finish line first, grinning as he hugged her. "Couldn't have done this without you," he said. Claire smiled, her eyes on Ethan's photo at the start line. Volunteers like Mike and Jenna cheered, their bond forged through months of fighting for the center. Even Ellen joined, her usual stoicism softened by the crowd's energy. Afterward, Claire learned Richard had resigned from the council, his reputation in tatters. The vandalism and tire slashing were traced to a hired thug, now cooperating with police. Nancy and Greg's trial loomed, and Claire was asked to testify. She agreed, though the thought made her stomach churn. At the center, she found a new lock on the gate, Ellen's doing to keep things secure. Claire smiled, remembering that jammed gate months ago. It had been the spark, her moment to step up. As winter settled in, the center thrived. Claire's programs expanded and she trained new volunteers, passing on Ethan's lessons of resilience. At the final meetup of the year, Tom raised a glass to her. "You saved this place, Claire." She shook her head, touching her patch. "We did." The room cheered, and Claire felt Ethan's presence, steady and proud. The fight had been long, but the center, the veterans, and her brother's memory were safe. She'd carry on, patch and all, for them. The trial loomed, and Claire prepared meticulously, her notebook now a thick chronicle of Greg and Nancy's misdeeds. She met with the prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Karen, who praised her evidence. "Your records are airtight," Karen said. "They'll sink Greg and Nancy." Claire nodded, but the weight of testifying pressed on her. She'd face them in court, their glares and lies, and Richard's shadow still lingered, though his resignation had quieted his influence. At home, she touched Ethan's dog tags, drawing strength. He'd faced worse odds, so could she. The community center pulsed with new energy. Claire's job training program expanded, with Lucas now co-leading sessions. Veterans shared stories of new jobs and renewed hope, their gratitude warming her. Mike and Jenna remained her rocks, helping with logistics and keeping spirits high. Ellen, now permanent director, implemented Claire's ideas, from expanded workshops to a digital memorial wall. But Claire stayed vigilant, checking locks and budgets, wary of lingering allies of Greg or Nancy. Court day arrived, cold and gray. Claire wore Ethan's patch, its threads grounding her as she took the stand. Greg's smirk was gone, replaced by a scowl. Nancy's face was pale, her pearls absent. Claire spoke clearly, detailing the budget discrepancies, the sticky note, the receipts. Her voice wavered only once, mentioning Ethan's memory, but she held firm. Karen's questions were precise, and Claire's answers left no room for doubt. Greg's lawyer tried to paint her as vindictive, but her evidence, projected for the jury, silenced him. The room felt electric, justice within reach. After testifying, Claire stepped outside, breathing deeply. Lisa waited, notepad ready. "You were incredible," she said. Claire shrugged. "Just told the truth." The trial stretched on, but Claire's part was done. She returned to the center, where volunteers greeted her with hugs. Tom handed her a coffee, his eyes crinkling. Ethan's smiling somewhere. Claire hoped so, her fingers tracing the patch. Weeks later, the verdict came. Guilty on multiple counts for Greg and Nancy. The center's funds were partially recovered, and Ellen ensured they'd go to veteran programs. Claire felt a weight lift, but scars remained. Sleepless nights, slashed tires, that hooded figure. She never learned who sent the anonymous letter, but it no longer mattered. The center was safe. its mission stronger than ever. At the year's final veteran meetup, Claire stood by the memorial wall, Ethan's photo among dozens. Lucas spoke, thanking her for his new start. The crowd applauded and Claire felt a lump in her throat. She fought for this, for Ethan, for Lucas, for every veteran who found hope here. As she locked the gate, now gleaming with fresh paint, she smiled. That jammed gate had been her beginning, a test she'd passed with Ethan's courage. The patch on her jacket gleamed under the streetlight, a quiet promise to keep fighting, to keep serving, to keep her brother's memory alive. Claire stood at the community center's entrance, the gate now a symbol of her journey. It swung smoothly, no longer jammed thanks to Ellen's upgrades. The veteran programs thrived, with Claire's job training and mental health workshops drawing national attention. A nonprofit offered funding, inspired by Lisa's articles, and Claire was invited to speak at a regional conference. She hesitated. Public speaking wasn't her forte, but Lucas urged her on. "You've got a story to tell," he said, his confidence a testament to her mentorship. She prepared her speech, weaving in Ethan's legacy and the center's revival. The patch stayed on her jacket, a talisman. At the conference, she faced a packed room, her nerves steadying as she spoke of resilience, community, and justice. The audience applauded, some in tears, and a veteran approached afterward, thanking her for honoring his fallen friend. Claire clutched Ethan's dog tags, her heart full. This was why she'd fought. Back home, the center buzzed with new volunteers, inspired by Claire's stand. Mike and Jenna planned a spring fundraiser and Claire mentored Lucas in leading it. Ellen shared news. The recovered funds had launched a scholarship in Ethan's name. Claire's eyes stung as she hung a plaque by the memorial wall, Ethan's name etched in gold. The community rallied, with even Richard's former allies donating quietly. Their influence faded. One evening, Claire found a package at her door, a new patch identical to Ethan, sent by Tom. A note read, "For the fight you finished." She smiled, sewing it beside the original. The center's gate, once a barrier, now welcomed all. Claire's notebook rested in a drawer, no longer needed but kept as a reminder. She'd faced Greg, Nancy, and Richard, turning their betrayal into a victory for the veterans. At the spring fundraiser, Claire stood by the memorial wall, watching families honor loved ones. Lucas led the event flawlessly, his growth a quiet pride for her. Mike raised a toast, his voice booming, to Claire, who fixed more than a gate. Laughter and cheers filled the room. Claire smiled, her fingers brushing the patches. The fight had been grueling, threats, sabotage, sleepless nights, but it had rebuilt the center and her purpose. As she locked up, the gate's smooth click echoed in the quiet night. Lisa's final article had called her a quiet hero, but Claire didn't feel heroic, just determined. Ethan's lessons had carried her through from that jammed gate to this moment. The center was a haven, its mission secure. Claire walked home, the patches glinting under streetlights, a promise kept. She fought for justice, for veterans, for Ethan, and one. Whatever came next, she'd face it with the same resolve, her brother's courage stitched into every step.